Hello. So I have actually tried to film this video two previous times, and both times for either technical reasons or articulation reasons, I was not satisfied. Because today I'm going to talk about The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Estelle Butler. I read this book. I finished this book a couple weeks ago, and I have not stopped thinking about it since. And I have also gone on to watch other reviews of Parable of the Sower, watch the crash course breakdown of it by John Green, find interviews with Octavia Butler of her reading her own work, and I'll leave all those descriptions, all of those links in the description. But I am in awe of this text. So, Parable of the Sower is a science fiction novel that was published in 1993 that is set in 2024. And in many cases, it has been called prophetic, and I completely agree with that. Because in this world, the gaps between the rich and the poor are ever widening. People lived in walled, gated communities to protect themselves from roving bands of wild dogs, to protect themselves from drug addicts who likes to set fires, to protect themselves from a corrupt police force that takes bribes and doesn't actually do any, detective work, or firefighters who don't actually come to put out fires for hours after they are lit. And in this dystopian world in which the climate has been completely destroyed, the United States is in chaos, and leaders have become more and more autocratic and fascist, we are introduced to Lauren Olamina, who's a 15-year-old daughter of a Baptist preacher living in one of these gated communities. And one of the things that is unique about her is that she has hyper empathy. Due to drug abuse from her mother while Lauren was in vitro, Lauren has the ability to feel both the pleasure and the pain of anybody that she sees. And as one can imagine, in this dystopian world, pain is much more prevalent than pleasure. And while this is a handicap in many ways, and throughout the course of the novel, she has to learn to fight, to move in crowds, to protect herself in the best way she can and protect the people she cares about, while knowing that any pain she inflicts on someone else, she herself will feel. But at the same time, it's Gosh. At the same time, it's a really fascinating question of what would you do to other people if you knew that that was going to happen to you in a literal, physical, visceral sense. In the novel, Lauren calls it a biological conscious. What would the world look like if everybody had that? And on top of that unique experience of having a hyper empathy, Lauren is also a prophet, even though that's a word she has not used to describe herself. I don't want to say the word create because she would oppose to that, but she is in the process of moving away from her Baptist Christian upbringing and writing down what she feels is being revealed to her, a new religion or philosophy called Earthseed. And in every chapter of the book, you have these beautiful little passages and poems of verse that Lauren has written. Things like God is chaos and clay, trickster and teacher. God is change. The destiny of Earthseed is to take root among the stars. And she really feels so strongly in her core that it's her mission to, one, create communities that are built around the ideals of Earthseed, safe, honest places that are simply not very accessible anymore in this world, while also helping them take root among the stars. Eventually, she believes that Earth cannot be salvaged and that different civilizations and colonies and communities in the heavens, what she calls a real heaven, is in their future. Something that I love about this book, beyond the fact that it feels so unsettling and so close to home with all the things that they're mentioning in the novel, either already happening in our current country or in the process of happening, is that we get to see the interconnectedness of individuals who have been pulled even further apart by race and class and greed and just personality. Lauren ends up on the road traveling north, trying to find a place with land, trying to find a place with access to clean water, with a mixed race, mixed background, intergenerational group of people who have all had very different experiences, some coming from gated communities like hers, some who were literal slaves, some who were part of corporate slavery, some who are risking traveling on the road even though they actually have the funds to fly, even though it is incredibly expensive, because they know that if they flew, by the time they got to their destination, they would have nothing left. Like, that is how inaccessible things like flying are in this world. And the novel is written in a way in which everything you're reading are Lauren's journal entries. So you're really seeing the world through her eyes and hearing it in her voice. And something that I find really interesting, that I think is supported by the way Octavia Butler introduces Lauren to us in the novel, is that Lauren writes with an almost, I don't want to say detached, but a very straightforward, matter-of-fact tone. And so there were some portions of the novel, I would say very short ones, where I felt that it was like, okay, this kind of feels more like an update rather than me like really getting to see what she thinks and feels about this fight that they were in, or the pros and cons of helping a child, or what does it mean to potentially fall in love and want to have a relationship with someone when, one, birth control and access to reproductive health care is pretty much non-existent or very rare, and also the hope element of it. What does it mean to fall in love and start a family and try to build something in a world that is desperately seeing like all it wants to do is tear everybody and everything down? I would not recommend this book to you if you are someone who is looking for books right now, which would be understandable, about escapism. If you want books that have nothing to do at all with the modern world and specifically what America is going through, if you're looking for a science fiction novel that has more fantastical elements and like deep space travel and aliens, and, talking robots, would not be the novel for you. Or maybe just not the novel for you at this point in time, because I have been wanting to read Octavia Butler for so long, and I am so glad that I finally have, because I feel like she is well on her way to becoming one of my newest favorite authors. The other thing I want to mention about Parable of the Sower that breaks my heart, but I do want to put it up front in case you're interested in following the series like I am, is that Octavia Butler unfortunately died in her 50s. And at that point, she'd only completed one other Parable novel, which is Parable of the Talents, the sequel to Parable of the Sower. According to interviews that I found, Octavia thought she had like 4 or 5 more books left in her in this series, but never got around to finishing it. So I already feel this sense of like melancholy for the fact that I know that I'm not going to be able to experience this story that died with Butler. And it also makes me think about so many stories that we may never be able to experience from people who have the ability and desire and feel the need to write, but certain political, social, cultural norms and expectations have kept those stories inside of them. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I know there are some people who won't pick up a series if they know A, it hasn't been finished yet, or B, it's never going to be finished. In the case of Parable of the Sower series, I have a very hard time imagining that whatever estate is in the control of Octavia's writing would allow another writer to complete it. And after reading, again, I've only read one Butler book, but I love it so much. After reading this book by Octavia Butler, I can't imagine anybody else writing it or continuing it. So that was a kind of rambly review. It's a rave. It was a rave. I just wanted to share my excitement about this book, and hopefully if you are interested in this type of work, you will pick it up. And one thing I will also say, in case there was someone out there who had some of the same assumptions and some of the same hesitancy about science fiction as I did, I used to think, and I really think this comes from spending a lot of years online, watching as a viewer, the fallout from Gamergate and just sexism and a lot of nerd culture and geek culture spaces. I thought science fiction was for men. I was aware that women wrote science fiction. I read Axiom's End early this year by Lindsay Ellis. I was aware that Afrofuturism existed and that there were Black writers and queer writers and women and people from marginalized groups writing in this genre. But for so long, it didn't even occur to me to pick up one of their books, or for so long, it didn't even occur to me to try to engage in that type of literature. For the same reason, even though I've been interested in video games for a long time, I've only very recently started to ease myself into it, because I had these mental and emotional barriers that this belonged to men, this belonged to white men, to cis white men. And I'm really excited that it was actually a college course I'm taking, one of my grad school courses, that had me read this book that kind of helped me push me over that ledge. And I'm really excited for books like Axiom's End, which are written by women and have a main character that is a queer woman, even though that is not it's not a story about her being queer. It's just something that is part of her personality. And I think this is one of the reasons why I love reading so much, is because even in cases like The Truth Machine by James Halperin, which I haven't talked about yet on this channel, but I will, where it was a book that I kind of had a middling experience with. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It in and of itself, just by me reading a science fiction book, a speculative fiction book, helped me realize some of the stereotypes I had about science fiction, even though that book was written by a cis white man. It's just, when you don't have experience with the genre for so long and you build up these ideas, any book you read, I'd imagine, that you start tipping your toe in the water, you are learning new things and you are making more informed decisions. I feel like I'm making more informed decisions about reading because I have access now to this new information, which I don't know if this video is going to go up before or after my anti-TBR tag, but I talked about my lack of experience with the romance genre as an adult, and perhaps if I might try to work myself into that as someone who for years has said that they don't read romance because the last time I read it was in high school. So that's a kind of like a tangential thing about the the science fiction field as a whole, and sexism and misogyny and misogynoir and all sorts of arts and culture that makes people feel like outsiders. But I love this book, Parable of the Sower, so much. I'm so excited to read more of Octavia Butler's work like Lillith's Brood and Kindred, and I really, really hope that if you read it, that you can accept that the things that are happening in Octavia Butler's novel are things that are already happening now. And that's part of what it makes it so profound and in some cases scary, that it isn't all fiction, that we are already on the path now. There are places in this country where people don't have access to clean water. There are places in this country where people die simply because they are poor, not for any other reason or fault of their own. And that if we don't band together, whether under the philosophies of Earthseed or a philosophy of any other religion or no religion at all, just personal morality, we may be headed for the type of brokenness that is exhibited in this novel. But I sincerely hope we do not get there. I hope I can do everything I can to prevent us from getting there. And I also hope that you have a great day. Bye.